So, okay, as we get into the first topic today, so do you guys remember that case and had to do with the baker? This was in Colorado, correct?
Yes.
And so the news came in today that the Supreme Court voted in favor of the baker. Now, what happened? He refused the right to serve and be of service to an LGBTQ couple. And so they took it, to court because it's like, hello, you can't refuse the right to serve us just because we're a part of the LGBTQ community. Well, because according to the law, you have the right to refuse the service. You don't have the right to refuse service based on religion, based on race, but nothing to do with sexual orientation. So our question today, in the changing times, should there be a new law in place that says that businesses cannot refuse the right to be of service to a community of people based on sexual orientation? Because that is such a part of our community now, and it's we're in Pride Month right now. June is Pride Month, and a lot of people will say, "Gosh, why does the LGBTQ community have to go and wave their flag? Like, why can't they just exist?" And it's like, well, they wouldn't need a month if there wasn't discrimination in the world. So because there's all this discrimination, there needs to be a month, and each year it seems as though the month becomes more inclusive and there's more events surrounded about positive energy. I do love that. Versus this like, oh my gosh, gay people are marching in the streets. It's like, no, you don't have to be of the LGBTQ community. You can be an ally to still celebrate Pride Month. So that's our question to you today. Should there be a law in place that protects those and their sexual orientation?
We've already got a lot of chatter happening. I'm going to go to my mom because she's at the top of the list right now.
Thanks, Mom, for tuning in.
Mama Day too.
She agrees with Julie Welker and says that they should boycott the bakery who started this problem in the first place. Julie Welker said boycott the bakery. Becca Swaza was saying, I was just searching to see if you guys were on. So glad that this popped up.
Yay!
Glad you're tuning in. Guys, if you could join me in sharing this right now, we want to get as many people involved in this conversation as possible. So comment and share, please.
I'm struggling to get mine.
So it says,
I just shared it.
You just shared this right now?
You're wonderful. I'm going to share it right now.
I'm getting there, everyone.
So here's the thing. I am a big advocate for the LGBTQ community. One of my favorite people in my whole family is a member of that community. He has been an integral part of making sure that I was taking the right steps in my career, and he's just such a strong person in his career, and I've always looked up to him. To think that there is a bakery who would have denied him and his husband service to celebrate what was one of the most magical days. They just had their anniversary over the weekend. 5 years. That is heartbreaking to me. Because love, and this sounds so cheesy, but love legitimately is love. And if you believe in the concept of love and what that is, anyone can have love in whatever form that takes on. And so Kirsten mentioned this earlier. If you're going to deny, and I'll tee you up for this one, if you're going to deny service to members of the LGBTQ community, who else are you going to deny services to?
Yeah. I was looking at your mic. I think, is your mic? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
It's okay.
Yeah, there we go. I'm a part of the Christian community, and one of my biggest, and I'm pretty vocal about this particular stance, is like, wait. I think we as Christians are doing it wrong when it comes to the LGBTQ community. It was like, the God I serve and the God that I thought we all served is a God of love. And I don't think we need to put barriers on that. And if we're going to start doing that, like my position that I raised in our small group is like, okay, so if we take the side of this baker, does this baker bake cakes for couples who may have had premarital sex? Does this couple not bake cakes for couples who will have alcohol at the wedding and someone's going to drink? It's like, why are we putting one sin over the other? And it's just, I don't have the answer to it, but I was like, I want us to all think, like, what would Jesus have done in this situation?
Literally.
So I'm looking here, and so the federal law does not prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation, so gays are not a protected group under the federal law.
Okay.
However, there are 20 states in this country, including New York and right here in California, that have enacted laws that prohibit discrimination in public accommodations based on someone's sexual orientation. So there's protection in 20 states, at least currently. So in California, you also can't discriminate based on someone's unconventional dress. In some states like Arizona, there's no state law banning discrimination against gays, but there are local laws in some cities that prohibit sexual orientation discrimination. So it's dependent on where you live in this country. And then the question is, and a lot of people will say, well, this couple then shouldn't have gone to a bakery and expect a different outcome. If you've got to know your surroundings, you have to know your state. Doesn't mean that it's not okay. But, and good for them for going and then raising the question as to why is it that we were denied this sort of attention, and hopefully something changes. I think we're all, I'm a huge ally of the community. Like I just mentioned, it is Pride Month, and this Friday, Sacramento Pride. Yeah, we're emceeing the Sac Pride Awards.
I'm lip singing. Yes, I was like, tell them I have dibs on Beyonce. So I can just lip sync to my girl.
So I want to get to some of the comments that are coming up. Tamara Caravan, I want to know, she's saying congratulations to the baker. I want to know why you feel that way. There are a number of other people. Nicole Brewer, who also says that. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that this is kudos to the baker and not upsetting about the couple who now lost the other end?
Well, I think we have to understand the other. There's
they're supporting the baker,
right, and I want to know why. I want to know why they're supporting him.
The typical argument that I've heard, and you guys can chime in, but the typical argument is like, he stood up for what he believed in, and it's pretty hard to do that. He's a business owner who's standing up for his right. He did this on the basis of a religious conviction, and so they were like, kudos to you for standing up, and then yay for you that you won this particular battle. Now, when I was taking a deeper look at this particular ruling, I would call it a small victory for this baker, if you look at it as such, because it doesn't give like all businesses clearance to
you just have the right
not serve.
Right.
When I took a closer look at the ruling, because I was like, wait a minute, because I feel like this could be historic, this could be paramount in gay rights issues. Like, what is this really saying? In this particular instance, they didn't go so far as to address all businesses when it comes to gay couples. So it's like, I think there's going to be some more discussion about this. We're going to see other cases. But in this particular instance, they felt like the Civil Rights Commission had a bias against this particular baker. So they made a decision based on this particular instance.
Like,
and
we're going to go try to order a cake from this bakery because we know that he is against it?
No, he had to appeal to get to the civil rights, to get to the Supreme Court. So he started off in like a Civil Rights Commission in their little city or town or state. And then it was appealed. It just went up higher hierarchies and rankings, in government. So when they got to the Supreme Court, they made a decision based on this one particular case. Not all cases, not all businesses can say, no, I don't have to serve you because of my religious convictions. And they're still looking at that. But in this particular case, this baker has a victory. But this doesn't say a whole lot for other businesses.
They were still going to be selling them goods from their bakery. They just chose not to make them a cake, a wedding cake, something symbolic. So they weren't refusing. There's just so many layers to this where they were allowing to sell them some of their goods, okay? But the weird part is that they didn't want to sell them a wedding cake.
And we have to also remember when this was. This was in 2012, so they also point out that at the time of this event, gay marriage was not legal in Colorado, which added to the baker's case. The decision was 7-2. Only Ginsburg and Sotomayor dissented that. So 2012 to 2018, that's 6 years. And how much has changed. And I want to know from you guys, do you think a lot has changed in 6 years? I mean, where were you guys 6 years ago, and how did you think?
16.
And what part of the country were you in?
New York.
In New York. How about you?
6 years ago, I was just starting my journalistic career. What was it, 2006 years? It's 2018, like 2012.
That's what we're saying this case was in 2012.
Yeah, 2012, the world was completely different. We didn't have gay marriage wasn't legalized. That was legalized maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
So we've come leaps and bounds, and you brought up something that was paramount. This case was officially filed back before we had same-sex marriage.
Right.
So I see that. I saw someone make a comment. I think it was Becca. Shout out to Becca for commenting. She said it's a slippery slope. They did make a decision on this, but I thought it was interesting that they didn't make an overall decision. It's like they're playing and waiting because there are probably plenty of cases that they have on their docket where they will decide same-sex issues. This just wasn't the case that was going to make the biggest statement.
I think that we just need one overarching law that groups in there with religious persecution and gender-based persecution. LGBTQ communities, part of that is gender identity. And so that should inherently be part of that gender discussion, in my opinion. That there is just that. But I want to get to TC Henry, who says, I hope all of you saying, way to go, Baker, because of your homophobia, get refused service due someday for something.
Yeah. And you believe in, well, you're not hurting anyone. That's my big thing.
Or
you're
just
trying to
being
love.
you.
You're just trying to love. You were born this way, as Gaga said.
Yeah.
You're just trying to live your best life. You're not hurting anyone. I can see if this hurt someone, physically put someone in pain, then it's like, well, I have the right to refuse service because I don't want to hurt anyone. I mean, that's my big thing. But this is about love.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is about love.
On the same side, let's say, when let's go with religion versus religion, because there's all types of religions.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm a Christian, I don't believe in the God that you serve, so I'm not going to sell you a product or service for, if you're
Christmas.
Muslim. It's like there's so many different things, like for Christmas or anything, there's so many different things. And I love the fact that people are like, I love when people are on fire for their faith, but it's just like, why don't we focus more on the love and the common thread that we all have, which is what I think that Jesus would have wanted us to do.
Excluding people, not including people.
I think he was a little more inclusive than we want to make it seem like.
Exclusive.
Ooh.
Exclusivity.
Julie Walker. This one is interesting.
Okay, Julie.
And I'm going to have to do some explaining for you, Julie, in this one. So she says, Muslims should have the right to deny any services like gas to people of other religions. And this is because a lot of our gas comes from the Middle East. I'm assuming this is why you're saying this, Julie Walker. And she says, if the baker can get his way, then all religions should be able to discriminate now against others, just like the Supreme Court said they could do. And going back to the person who said this is a slippery slope, that is precisely why it's a slippery slope. And if we don't get ahead of this now and dictate how this conversation will go when the next person tries to get a cake in Colorado or wherever, then we're going to be hit with more of this backlash. And I just don't think it's necessary when we can be focusing our attentions on getting a law passed that protects all people instead of discriminating against a small group.
Okay, but for the business owner, I'm just asking this question. I'm not taking a side. Do they have the right to say, no, I don't have to make you a cake?
In general, yes, they have that right. But under the Supreme Court, they do not have that right when it is against a gender or against a religion.
It says the SCOTUS says, talking about the Supreme Court here, says that while Colorado has a right to prevent discrimination based on sexual orientation, as it currently stands, because there is no law against that, they must do so while remaining neutral to religion. Because religion is part of that Civil Rights Act, right, Anti-Discrimination Act, you have to leave religion aside. So if the baker came forward and that's what he was using it based upon, then that wouldn't have held up at the Supreme Court level because religion can't come into play. But if it was merely for the fact of sexual orientation, it's fair game according to the federal law, which is the question, do you think that there needs to be a protection in place to protect those who are part of the LGBTQ community?
I do, and then to that, I think that there needs to be representation for that community within the Supreme Court. Because then maybe you're more likely to get a ruling that represents that community fairly.
You're right. It was so historic when we had, like, I forget, was it Thurgood Marshall, the first Black Supreme Court justice, and it was like he was able to present the point of view, because as an older white man, they don't really have the direct experience as a Black man would have in the world. So it's like you can't really make a decision because you don't have the experience. It's,
and that's at the root of
nice
everything,
to have the representation. I don't know.
But even with one person of the LGBTQ community up at the Supreme Court, of the 9 justices, right? It was a 7-2 vote. Even if there was one, that still would not have helped this case.
No.
So you could say that in those votes, you have some sway. You're going to have some conversations with your other justices, and
eye-opening.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that
I think
conversation
we have some
will
pretty
illuminate why this particular decision might not have been the best
one voice
overall.
Better than no voice.
Correct.
I think we have some pretty liberal justices on the Supreme Court right now.
Sotomayor,
very liberal. And there were a couple too that like kind of normally lean liberal, especially when it comes to same-sex issues. But on the merit of this particular case, they had to say something like, well, this is what we're going to decide on, and we are not making an overarching decision. So in my mind, that leads me to believe that there is something more coming down the pipeline. Now, although they made this particular decision here, that doesn't really represent their goal or what they want legislation to be in the future. What do you guys think?
I think that for some people coming up in the comments, one of the points that they're making to that is that this couple sought out this baker because they knew what the decision would be on their end in order to create this sort of conversation that we're having. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that it's wrong. But a lot of people are highlighting that as a point of contention in this story. And what I'm saying is, isn't that the way all change happens? You see a problem,
It's a part
you
of
find a way
protesting.
to
It's a form of protest.
Exactly. You find a way
I'm
to
here
address
for
it.
I'm here for it.
So I don't find fault with them for that, but I could see how people would be agitated that they went and sought out an issue in order to highlight
Well,
the
there's
problem.
so many other bakers they could have gone to. So they purposely
should
went
they
there.
have to?
They shouldn't have to, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was somebody out there in the Colorado community who would have loved to make them a cake and would not have to deal with all this backlash. But maybe this is the stance they wanted to take. They want to see this change happen. Yeah, and so now we have a ruling of some sort, but do we actually need a new law to go into effect that covers everyone so they don't have to deal with this?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
I think the goal
I think
should
it's
be a law.
time. It's 2018. It's time.
It's been past time.
It's been past time. I'm seeing more and more inclusivity. You know, to Mason, who's behind the camera, another millennial. You know, and maybe this is a generational thing. And a lot of
think
times
so.
we say that. You know, we grew up in a time, and each and every one of us here who are speaking on this are millennials, and we grew up in a time when coming out of the closet has started to become. We question it. Why does one have to ever be put in a closet to come out of? We don't come out as like, hey, I'm straight, mom and dad.
Right.
Yeah,
We,
the perspective.
do you know that kind of angst that so many of my family members, so many of my best friends have had to go through? It's traumatic.
Right. The
To
stress.
even think about that, and some never have to. So I can't speak on everyone's behalf because parents knew from the get-go.
Exactly.
But it's never. Most cases, I have not met one person where it has been so comfortable to just be in the skin you're in. I had a professor in college who. She's one of my gender studies professors, and she was raising children. So it's an interesting time for her because she wants to, everything she talked about in class, she wants to make sure that, hey, when it comes to like gender nonconformity, like does your little girl have to wear pink when they're born? Do you have to have a gender reveal? Like everything was so technical, and it was an interesting time for her because she started to learn that she just needed to let her kids live and be in the skin they're in and dress themselves when they want to go to school and figure it out for themselves. But that's not everyone isn't fortunate enough to have a parent who's that understanding.
Right.
But if you have a law in place and it says across the board that this isn't right, at least on the federal level, there's still going to be people who feel a certain way. But at least on this level, they're protected.
Yes.
Protected from the fear of being beat up, being killed, being discriminated against. I think they deserve that.
I saw this article about a family not that long ago where the family decided not to refer to their child as either he or she.
Yes.
We talked about this here.
But, oh, okay, I must not have been here that day. But that was one of the most progressive things I have seen in a long time. Now, quite possibly is a problem when it comes to teaching them pronouns, but it could be cool. And I think that
They said they get to decide once they've reached an age, I think said around 3 years old, they get to decide if they're not get to, but that's the normal time in which they come out and say, Mommy, I'm a boy or I'm a girl. But until then, it's just they.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you're little and you're learning he, she, him, her,
That's
you're
what-
learning
What
those
bathroom
things
do they get to go
at
into
18
though?
months and up. Say that again.
Well, what bathroom do they get to go into?
Wherever your mom
elementary
goes
school.
into.
No, but you're in elementary school. What
Right.
bathroom
They
do
said
walk
until
into?
like 3
Yeah.
before elementary school
Okay,
kicks
got
into
it.
place.
Thanks so much for watching the ABC 10 Information Network. If you want to see more stories just like this one, all you've got to do is click subscribe.